A lot of people, I mean, I guess all people in some way, we look at life through our own experience and we imagine what it would be like to be somebody else. And sometimes we see it, it's the grass is greener thing. Everybody's guilty of this sometimes. And a lot of it is because we don't live the life of other people. So we can't guess, we don't really know what it's like. But I want to give you guys some right here, break one of these kind of notions that I think a lot of people have. And the idea is that the top guys have it better. The top guys, they don't live, I guess, in the same world that we do. And I think in some ways, and I've said this before, but people didn't. I don't think people took it seriously. I think that the more successful a guy is, in a way, the worse it is. The more risky it is, for sure. And the reason is that everything that we see with men of all types, hypergamy, just the ruthlessness of women wanting, money for their kids, and basically not caring at all what men think, just looking at men as ways to succeed, really, for themselves, to have the best children, to have the most money. That type of woman, the higher you go in society, like we know that there's women are very competitive with each other, right, to get men. Now, what happens? Just imagine you are a guy in the top percentages. So, what type of woman can climb that ladder against all these other women that want the same thing? Like, who is that type? What is the type of woman that can get the top guys? And what is it like to be a guy having to deal with the type of women who get the top guys? When I was in Hollywood Hills, I met a lot of people because I was Hollywood Hills is a funny place. Like it's really funny actually because the neighbors would come over and they would just like be totally drunk, and they'd be like, they'd come in, bust the door open, and basically go to the wine cellar of the guy's house I was staying in, grab like a bunch of expensive bottles of wine, and say, just tell Jack, that's not his real name, but tell Jack that we got some wine and we'll get it back to him tomorrow. And I was like, I guess I'm supposed to let this happen because it didn't seem like theft, right? It just seemed like they were friends. I was like, you're taking care of some guy's house. What the fuck do you do, right? And these people that came in are famous, right? So I'm like, I think this is okay. So, okay, I'll be nice. So I let him take the wine. So then, the guy came home and I said, hey, those guys came over and they busted in the door and they got, some wine. And then he's like, oh, that's great. He goes, so I was like, why is that? He goes, that's tomorrow. They'll come back and we'll party and they'll bring some better wine. So I was like, oh, okay. And I realized that in Hollywood Hills, there's this very friendly vibe up in the top of the hills amongst all the people that are similar, because you can't live up there unless you're super, wealthy and famous, basically. You can be just wealthy, but a lot of people have both, right? So that community I got to know quite well. And it was interesting. Like I said, it was very interesting. Kind of blew my mind, actually. A very interesting community up there. But the thing is that what I heard there was a lot of stories about men and families being ruined by women. So the story I often heard in the Hollywood Hills was the same story. Is that there was a lot of family wealth. Okay, so they owned like several houses in the Hollywood Hills. They had businesses in LA. They had, some family members in the movie industry, whether they're actors or producers or whatever. And then one of the guys married, one of his fans or the wrong woman. And that one person destroyed the family wealth that had been building for many generations. And I heard that story in the Hollywood Hills so many times. And it got me thinking, like, just really how dangerous the type of woman is who gets the top guys. And as a regular guy, we really can't understand. We only see life through our own perspective. So a lot of guys, they just think, oh, a woman wants me to work all the time, and she wants me to, pull the weeds, do all the bad jobs, and she might cheat. And so we see that, that's pretty bad, right? Like that, to us, that's pretty bad. But I will tell you that destroying the family wealth, like generations of wealth, and forcing like the whole family out of their houses, children out of schools, just the hopes and dreams and lives of people who were raised with wealth, to suddenly everybody being out, and not for a good reason, not because the family made a bad business decision, not because they were not smart and industrious, but just simply because the son who was handling the wealth, who was in charge of the wealth, married the wrong woman. And that is a story that is so common. And just think about it logically. You don't have much, right? Let's just say you're just a regular guy. You just really can't imagine that the virility. It's almost like this. The superbugs in the hospitals, those bugs, they will take down even the most healthy person, right? And that's what happens in evolution, is that as the challenge gets higher, the competition gets tougher, and the virus gets just more virulent and more virulent to finally be able to get down that most powerful, strongest, healthiest person, right? And so here's another example. This article here, I'll just do a quick one, is the ex-wife of late Lorenzen Wright receives 30-year sentence after pleading guilty to facilitating his murder. Now, this is pretty rare. You don't usually have women usually get out of, they usually don't get sentenced for things. But here's a case where she was, and the reason why, we can read about it. Shara Wright, ex-wife of slain NBA player Lorenzen Wright, pleaded guilty to facilitating first-degree murder. So she pleaded guilty. So she absolutely did it in his shooting death 9 years ago, and received a 30-year prison sentence. Okay. She made the plea during a hearing, blah, blah, blah. The murder remained unsolved for almost an entire decade. So his body was found in a swampy field in Memphis. He was 34 years old. Let's see here. His body had bullet wounds, multiple bullet wounds. And she was first charged with first-degree murder in 2017. And basically, she's, like, these trials take forever, right? And there was another guy she hired to do this shooting. Let's see here. But here's why she got the 30 years, is because she had initially planned to kill her ex-husband before the actual murder. So she hired two men to assassinate him, but they failed, right? So there was a record of her. I think my personal feeling is if she hadn't tried 2 times, she would have gotten away with it. A man would get busted even if he tried once and it didn't even happen. Like he just planned it. But for a woman, they actually have to, they have to have, like, basically killers coming, trying to shoot him, and then somehow he miraculously survives. And then, years later, there's another shooting that she hires, and then that one works, and the guy's dead. And then society just can't ignore it any longer. They can't just say she's a victim. They have to. It's very kicking and screaming type of thing. Society just will not accept that women are violent and do kill people. It's very common. Many, many men have been driven to their graves by their wives. It's just, for some reason, they can't see it. And I want to do a video on this in the future, because I read quite significantly about cartels in Mexico, and more cartels are led by women. And they said that they asked the investigators, it was a very in-depth report. It's like 40 pages long. And they said, what is the biggest difficulty that they have? And they said the biggest difficulty is that society cannot accept that women are murderers and killers and ruthless killers. And so when they catch the cartel leaders that are women, and I'm talking on the ground, the guys who catch them can't believe that this woman did it. She basically talks her way out of it, and they let her go. And they said that's the biggest difficulty that law enforcement has in catching these new type of cartel leaders that are female, is because the guys on the ground, it basically chivalry is letting the cartels go on. I mean, it's crazy, but look at this. Let's look at this guy just real quick. So he was selected 7th overall. I don't remember this guy, even though I follow basketball. But he was 13 seasons, right? Clippers, Hawks, Grizzlies, Kings, Cavaliers. So this guy here, solid points here, 8 points, 6.4 rebounds. That's 6.4 rebounds is really strong. This guy was like a Rodman type of dude. But basically that led to his death. So, you really got to imagine, and it is what I want to really, really kind of pound or at least introduce into your mind, is that other guys actually have it worse. And this dude is definitely an alpha guy, right? No doubt about it. And you imagine his life is so good. But this guy, if you think about it, let's look from his perspective. Look in his eyes. He was a hunted man. He was being hunted for murder, because long before that first actual attempt on his life, this guy knew. And men, we just put on a brave face. We sit there, we tell our parents everything's good. Our neighbors, how's it going? Pretty good. We put on a brave face, but I think the whole deal with MGTOW is that guys are just like, I can't live that lie anymore. Is that life is not good for men in the West. It's just not. And guys are just saying like, hey, whatever you think about it, you can talk all you want. You can say we're privileged or whatever you want to say, but it's just not good. And I'm not going to play along. Like I'm not going to ride that carousel. I'm just going to say, yeah, it's not good. Is it good to be a hunted man? Is it good to have the person that is supposed to love and support you? And I think one of the hardest things for these guys who have choice in women is that when they do get a bad woman, and it's really common, I think you can just kind of assume that a successful guy has a bad woman, pretty much. It really is, because it's a numbers game. Is that there could be I'm sure there was good women going for this guy, but they just got knocked out of the way by this one here. They just got cut down, just like she cut down this guy's life. She sliced up and cut down any nice girl who was in his path. She set him up. She lied about him. She did anything she could. I'm sure the women that are listening to this episode can tell me what she probably did to those women to get them out of his life, because it's not like just because you are a virulent virus of a person who can fight her way to the top, right? It's like, just because that doesn't mean that the other women aren't there. You're not alone until the very end. The battle is rough for top guys. It is rough. And I really like to have a woman on an episode to talk about the battles that she's seen for these top guys. What actually happens behind the scenes and how it affects the guy. Because I know, as a guy who has choice myself, I always, I'm sure there was many things going through his mind, but one of them obviously is that he's being hunted down and murdered like an animal, and he was murdered. So you can imagine the fear. You could imagine the sleepless nights. I mean, really, it's a cold. It's deep space level cold wind that went through this man's life. His NBA career was essentially just a farce, because his real life was being hunted down like a dog and killed. And that's exactly what happens to a lot of rich guys, a lot of famous guys. So one thing I don't like, I really don't like, is that when is a successful guy, and he picks a bad woman who divorces him, everybody says it's his fault. But they don't understand. These are guys who never had these type of women after them. So they assume that all women are the same. But it's not true. Just like the most successful guys, if you look at a very successful man and you look at a very unsuccessful man, these are very different people. They know how to be on time, they work hard, they're disciplined, they go to school, there's a lot of big differences. And it's the same with a very successful in marriage woman, is that they are completely different animals, the ones that rise to the top. And but at the same time, they have to be very careful, women especially, to look good on the surface. So, next time you see a rich, wealthy guy who's married, and with a hot woman, just don't assume that you know what's going on. And don't assume that you would have been able to handle it, because I think it's the problem is that these wealthy guys don't get the type of training from their family that they need. I know a lot of wealthy people, and when they get trust funds and things like that, they have lawyers that essentially are like life coaches for the children, and they teach them, like, once this trust fund's in your name, you're going to have a lot of people trying to get this money. So they set up fail-safe devices so the children don't lose the money, because that's what happens when you're very wealthy, is that you do have a lot of scumbags trying to steal your money constantly and trick you into giving you the money, and it's men and women. So they what they do is they set up like a trust fund that only gives so much money per month, no matter what. And that type of thing, it can be the purpose of those type of contracts can be to stop them if they have a drug problem, or from just buying too many sports cars. But a lot of times the real protection is from the significant other, who is going to come in and swoop in and take that money. And there are men who do this too. There are men who marry women with trust funds and steal the money and ruin the family. So that can happen, but just because of the way society is, no, not because of the way society is, there's less men doing that, basically. There are men, but with women, they're basically trained, and it's their evolutionary kind of imperative is to get as much as they can for their kids and security, and that means money, right? So and it's encouraged by society. It's encouraged. Women are encouraged. Women are not encouraged to marry homeless guys. They are encouraged. They are shined upon by everybody when they have married a successful guy, and that's the way it is. And men are not. Men are, the attaboys come to men when they earn that money. When men marry a successful woman and ruin the family, I mean, they are really seen as criminals and the lowest scum. Whereas women, the people like myself that know families that have been ruined by this, we see them as like the worst kind of scum, because they're the most covert scum, But the average person, I think it crosses their mind, that these people are total scum. It crosses their mind. They're like, looks like she destroyed the family, but, and then they start making excuses. But, he was not perfect. He cheated once, blah, blah, blah. There's always a lot of excuses because life is like that. And wealthy people do have lovers on the side. There's always a reason why, she's not just total scum, which is what I'm talking about here. Just murdering scum is what a lot of these women are. And yet society just can't face that. They can't, just like she had to do 2 murders, attempted murders to finally, finally, society's able to do it. So society can accept the truth about criminal women, but it takes a lot more. And 2 attempts on your life, I mean, mentally, there was 2 that we know about. But I can guarantee you this, is there was a lot. Because as a guy who's dated so many women, that I have seen these type of women. I have dated these type of women. And I'm telling you, these type of women are cold, man. I'm telling you, they're fucking cold. They will do. They are. This is what a lot of guys really, and I always see it in the comments. There's always one guy who says, "Yeah, all women are narcissists. All women." The thing is, these guys, when you don't realize people are different, and that there are virulent people who go to the top, and they are different than the people who just kind of give up, or they might have a desire, but they don't really have the drive to do it. They don't have the ruthlessness to get to that top. When they don't understand the difference, to be able to prioritize or to put in a hierarchy the different types of people, that's the type of person that's the most easiest to fool. So if you ask somebody who says all women are the same, why they do that, they think that they're being the most tough on women because they're just saying everybody. But actually, they're the easiest to fool because they're not able to see the worst people, the worst, to be able to say, wait a second, ooh, because for myself, I feel the cold wind when I see a woman who is basically a murderer. I can see that. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between a murderer and a person who will divorce you. There is a big fucking difference. And it is a fucking cold fucking difference. And some women are cold ass murderers. And you have to know that. And these are the type of women who marry rich guys. They are that type. They might not do it because it might not be the best solution for this situation. But basically, their blood runs the temperature of deep space, minus 400 degrees or whatever it is. Like, we're talking a different level of cold. And, I think as a guy who, right now at this time in my life, I don't have these type of women in my life. But when I was younger, when I was the very hot guy, I can tell you, and even fairly recently when I was needed for something, and there was competition, I felt it again. I saw it again. I saw this cold. Okay, you guys, I'm talking from experience. I'm telling you that there are cold-blooded murdering women out there. And you have to watch yourself. I think one of the toughest things for me is to realize that a woman can be a real threat to a man. I think I really had a tough time believing that because my body's so versatile. I've survived so many types of things that I have a confidence, right? I have a real confidence in myself. But I've learned that I saw a video once, and it was gangs in LA. And it was a pretty interesting video there was one section because they had one of the gang guys, one of the top guys, and they said, the reporter was kind of joking, actually. He said, we heard that more and more women are leading LA gangs. And, like, ha, 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 like kind of like girl power was the feeling in this interview. And they obviously weren't thinking about it, but that was, you can see how society's attitudes, they just don't go away easy, right? So they're kind of like that. And the guy, the gang member who had been, obviously this guy in the interview was just like, he was a cold-blooded motherfucker himself, right? He just suddenly put his head down and he's like, hey, man. He's like, listen, man, it doesn't take much strength to pull that trigger. And he was talking from experience. Is that many of his friends, he went on to explain, many of his friends had been murdered by female hitmen. And, that is the truth, is society just does not want to see, does not want to accept, that women definitely can be murderers. And if you look at Israeli, like the what is that, Sunbet, a lot of the hype men are women, a lot of them. And look, I think abortion's murder myself. And who kills more people? It's women. Babies are killed all the time. And I said it before, but I think whenever you talk about anything, like say an infraction of a soccer rule, and you always have to say, you have to put it on a scale, like how bad was it? Because there are people who, like some fouls in sports are close to attempted murder. Like there are like ruthless. There's an intentional foul in NBA. They have an extra penalty for that. But the extra penalty does not make up for it. Some of these guys, they're going for like injury, which is career ending, right? The guy's in the air, they're deliberately putting their feet underneath him so that he's gonna sprain his ankle, or they land, they're like knocking him. There's type of injuries that are more ruthless, okay, than other ones, right? They're more intentional. Other things are less intentional. They're just kind of like, the guy's, his feet are there. He didn't really mean it, but he didn't move him either. It's kind of unclear. Same with all these things, is that there is a big difference in women. So guys, if you're not a top guy, and you've kind of had this feeling, hey man, I wish I was, and man, these guys have it made, don't assume that life is so good for these guys, because there's really no such thing as a top woman. That's basically what I'm saying. Like the best women are basically sweet. You know what I mean? Like they're not really that tough. The best women, they don't make it to the top. They don't. The woman that that I would want to date or be around, I'm telling you, she's usually just pretty easy to roll over. She's not going to rise up to this level here. And it's not that anybody wants, what do I call it? What do I say? There's nowhere to go for these women. Like the purpose in life, our purposes are not complex, right? Survival and reproduction, they're just not that complex. And competition creates a level, a class of people that it's I mean, there's nothing we can do about it, but it's not, you're good in the middle. You're good in the middle. Just there's nothing up there that you need. You know what I mean? Like there isn't. And there are some women that are very hot, actually, who are sweet. This is another thing that's a very big misnomer guys have, that have never had the top women. The top, I'm talking the virulent ones. The ones who get to the top, I should say. They've never, so they think that all hot women are like that. It's not true. It's not true. There are some very hot women who, whatever the way they were raised or whatever, they're just not like that. And they get destroyed by ugly women who are ruthless. And I think that ugly, ruthless women this is my own personal opinion, from my own experience. I personally think the most virulent type of this type of murdering women is the ugly ones. I personally think it is, because they have a resentment against beautiful women, and they are just fucking ruthless in their climb to the top. Social climbers, and going the gold diggers. You take the top of the top, and they're generally, a lot of life, and this works with success, and it also works with, just ruthlessness. But the top people that do well in a sport are often not the most talented, but they're the most hardworking, right? And it's so same with the ruthless women. They're often not the most talented, quote unquote, like as far as beauty and all that stuff, but they just want it. They just fucking want it more, and they're fucking willing to do whatever it takes. So do not, and I'm just going to end on this, guys, is I think a lot of men, I don't know what kind of relationship you're in right now, if you're in a relationship, but consider my words that it is possible that you are living with a real poisonous snake, okay? I'm not saying she is. That is not what I'm saying, okay? And that is, guys, it's so difficult to hear my videos, to really hear them. I'm not talking that every woman is. No, I'm saying it's possible. And you have to look in the eyes. You have to look at the background. You have to look at what they've done. And you got to be honest. You got to get off the pedestal that you're invincible. Because just like that LA gang member, he's like, man, it doesn't take much strength to pull that trigger. And when you're sleeping, and, if you have money, when you're sleeping, when you're sick, when you're in the shower, when you're vulnerable, do not think for a second that you know what I mean? You can't stop a nuclear explosion. There's a lot of things you're not capable of doing. And that's what I think men really have a tough time with this, is because we really do. We were like, I can do anything, and that kind of attitude in men is what makes us successful. That confidence, But along with confidence, you need to have a respect. Okay, you need to have a respect for this type of woman, is what I'm saying. Just like you respect a gang member in the sense that guy, you know what I mean? You're not joking around with this guy, because even if you know this guy, like say he lives in your neighborhood and you're somewhat friendly with him, there's a limit. This guy is capable of just, things that you don't want to happen to you. And that's the same thing with these women. So again, it's not about doing anything. It's just you see them. I don't know, whatever you have to do, because we're all brainwashed by society at some level. If you see her face if you take a poisonous snake, and you Photoshop so that her face is half poisonous snake and half human, or whatever it takes, that you need a visual, okay, where her face becomes like a gang member, whatever it is, or whatever it is that emotionally hits you as something that could take your life. Okay, you start to see that a woman can take your life and can take your soul. You need to know that. Okay, you need to have that respect, and it doesn't mean, okay, see, when you're out there yapping away about women, right, you're not having the attitude I'm talking about. You can be nice to everybody, and you can see people, but when you see the cold wind, when you feel down your spine the temperature of space in a woman, you have to realize that's true, or it's very likely true. Okay? We can't know everything in life. Okay? A lot of life is in predicting. You predict when you hire somebody. You predict that they're going to succeed. Okay? You predict that it's going to rain. You predict that somebody in your team is going to come through with that. Okay? You predict it. You give them a job and you let them do it. Because you predict that there's a high chance of success. You are allowed in every part of your life to predict. And people will say, oh, but you don't know. That's the whole thing. We don't know in life. A lot of information we don't know. When you see a snake going through the grass, and you don't really see the body that well, you don't know for sure that it's a non-poisonous snake, right? Unless it's an area that has no poisonous snakes. Like in Japan, in northern Japan, there's no poisonous snakes. There's the habu down south, but so in an area like that, then you can say with almost sureness, unless, okay, this is what happens, is that kids get these poisonous snakes and let them go in the wild. So there always is a chance, right, that when you see a snake, you need to have respect, okay? That snake might be poisonous until you see, oh, it's a gardener snake, right? And you need to like, in the case of snakes, you need to like have respect, because the reason why would you have massive respect for snakes? The reason is because the penalty is so great for mistake. Now with women, the penalty is not so great, because women don't come up and bite you and you die. There's a long process that a cold-blooded murdering woman will kill you. She's not going to kill you on the first date, right? That's not what women do. So you don't have to have, again, I'm not saying like when you see a woman, you think, oh, it's not that. But when you start to see the signs and you're in a relationship, okay, see, you don't care about some famous guy's wife, whoever it is, some famous star. You don't care. It doesn't affect you. Okay, it's in a relationship I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're in deep. Okay, you're in deep with somebody and you know them. Okay, this is my message, and this message might save somebody's life on this channel. If you're in deep in a relationship with somebody and you realize that this is what is going on, is that there is a snake, a poisonous snake in your house, okay? And you put together the pieces after all the years, and you're like, oh my God, I'm not facing this one. Don't be like this guy, okay? Don't be like Lorenzen Wright. Get out of there. Get out of there. Have that respect for that woman. Have that respect. You need to have respect and get out. Do not do what a lot of stupid guys do, is they tell the girl, oh, you're cold-blooded. It's like, no, man. No, I'm not talking about that type. The regular type that you can talk to, I'm not talking about that type of woman. I'm talking about this type of woman here. If you have this in your house, okay, you need to be very smart about your exit, okay? You cannot take this one lightly. You got to be you can get out. It's fine. But you got to be smart, okay? Have respect. Have respect for that type of danger. And you as a man are not above this. And this is what, it really is what guys have the toughest time with. I know myself, I have the toughest time. I really had the toughest time accepting this one. Because I can handle 99% of women, it's no problem. Like, I can have a relationship, it's whatever, it's totally fine. But there's that, well, it's way less than 1%. But there's that virulent type. And you got to know they'll take your life. You got to know that and just knowing that will destroy you if you stay with them, even if they don't do it. This guy was attempted murder once. I would have disappeared. I would have just disappeared at any cost, even if I had to leave all my stuff. I would have grabbed some cash. I would have gotten out of there. I would have left. I would have gotten out a passport. I would have gone somewhere else. I would not have stayed with this. And I would not have done. Here's the other thing, too. These type women, you don't use the court system either. Would you use the court system against Pablo Escobar at the peak of his career? Just think about that. How would you handle Pablo Escobar? Would you be the guy in court testifying against Pablo Escobar? Why not? That's what we're talking about. The Pablo Escobar of women. You cannot use the courts. She's going to take you out. She's going to take you out. So be smart, guys. Be smart. And know that you're not invulnerable as a man. And if you're an average guy and you've never had to deal with this kind of stuff, just remember, next time you see a celebrity who gets screwed over. People were saying, why was Ronin so easy on that basketball guy? I forgot the guy's name, but the guy who got screwed over recently, Washington, PJ Washington. Why was Ronin so kind of different on that one? Is because I know the type of woman that was, and I have respect, and I'm like, hey, at least the guy's alive. You know what I mean? The dude is not dead. And the only reason why the dude is not dead in this case is because she was able to get what she wanted without that. But if that was what she needed to get what she wanted, as in this case, then that's what she was going to do. That's what she's going to do. So probably this case, they're not talking about it, but there was probably a big life insurance policy. And she's like, I want that money. And she's and these type of top criminals, and that's what we're talking about here. That's the way they think. It's just like, oh, how can I get the most? Oh, life insurance. That's the best way. Yeah. Yeah, that's the best way. Yeah. These type of women are not angry. They're just cold. Okay, they're not angry. It's just like, they're just cold. They're just calculating. They're just like, oh, I can get more if he's gone. Well then let's do that. Yeah, and let's go party. Let's go party in Vegas, once this is over. Right. So guys, don't assume about other men. Top guys, and another thing I'm going to end on too is that guys with good genetics is that women steal their babies, and guys with the best genetics, women steal their babies, and basically abduct their children. And I will tell you that parental alienation and child abduction, they don't call it that when it's against men. But it's the same thing. When men have their child abducted because the woman wanted, she wanted his baby. She wanted his genetics. Is a top guy, a guy that's very in demand, often is a very balanced guy in many ways because he has multi-talents to get there. Like a top basketball player, he needs to be able to handle money. He has to have contracts. He has to be able to handle public scrutiny. He has to be good in basketball. He has to be, control his weight, things that you don't even think about. He's got to have multi-talents in order to, he's got to be able to control his anger when he gets fouled. These guys have multi-talents to get to the top. It's not just basketball. There's many, 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 many stories about famous guys with way more talent who never get to the top of basketball because they just don't have the discipline, and they have one area of their life that ruins, whether it's gambling, problem or whatever, drug problem. They can't. Basketball Diaries, great movie. There's one thing that stops him from getting to the top. So these guys tend to be the type that would want kids because they're like well-balanced, talented men, and well-balanced, talented men have a desire to have kids, period. That's usually the way it is. Not every man, but they tend to, because that's an evolutionary successful trait. So it's been basically bred into us, is that we, the unsuccessful men will tend, and women tend to not like kids, and whereas like the more successful men, they tend to like kids because the more kids they had, the more likely their genes survived and then they're here, right? So you can see it's pretty obvious. So a top guy having his child abducted, a guy who really wants children, who really loves kids, who really loves his own child, having his child abducted is the level, it really is the level of murder. And you can read about it. People who have their children abducted. I just read a story of a woman who was married to a Japanese guy, and child abductions are huge in Japan. People take their kids, like Japanese people, and they go back to Japan, and Japan didn't sign the Hague convention, and so they allow child abductions. And usually it's men, but you know how it is in these articles. Of course, they focus on the one woman who had it. It's usually men in Japan that have their children abducted by women, because by far, foreign men are having babies with Japanese women more than Japanese men, and so it's more common. But when the interview with the woman who had her children abducted, which is terrible. It's the same as a man. It's terrible. Child abduction it's inhumane. It's terribly harmful to everybody. The child, it's a crime. It's a crime in most reasonable countries. Japan is totally unreasonable on this. And that is what happens to a successful guy like this. The type. Actually, I shouldn't say that. No, it's not this type of guy. It can happen to a guy with the top genetics. A woman doesn't need the man to have money, but if he has the genes, now a woman would prefer a guy with the best genes and the money so she can get both. But often happens is she'll settle. She's getting older. She's a guy with the best genes, and she is a criminal, and so she will abduct the child and alienate the child from the father. So if you're a guy this hasn't happened to, or this, isn't something in your wheelhouse, be grateful. Be grateful. Because if you're the most successful guy, whether it is in just genes, you are a target for this type of criminal woman. Now, they're not going to kill you because they don't have to. They just want your baby. So they will abduct your child and ruin the child's life by taking the father away. But with this guy, with the money, the top, okay, there is no top women. That's the thing. A good woman is just a regular woman who wants to have family, who is supportive, who is a balanced, loving person. That really is the gem, that the guys really want. That's the hot thing. There's no. That's the thing. There really are in my mind. I could listen to the comments, and maybe there is some exceptions, but in general, there aren't any top women. The top women are the ones who achieve their goals, their evolutionary goals, and of survival and reproduction. And anything above that, it's not. It's kind of a what do you call it? It's a product of the very short period of capitalism that we live in. If you look historically, where I guess historically there was nowhere to go to the top, but now that there is, we have these new categories of people that didn't exist on the prairies. They just didn't exist. You had kings. I guess in the old days, the woman that ended up with the king would be this type. So it existed, but it was much smaller, because there was only one king, And so the fight to get to that guy, I'm sure, was incredibly ruthless, And yeah, and now you have more top guys. Yeah, that's what it is. There's like more kings now. So you're having more ruthless females going to the top. And then you have other ones who target the other type of successful guys, which are the ones that I said, like with the top genes. And they will future fake that guy and then abduct his child. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're not one of those guys, like like an NBA star, or you don't have like the very best genes that women want to abduct your child, don't be too sad about it. I mean, You know what I mean? Just, really, you're lucky in a way. You're very lucky because you really don't want to. I mean, when you think about it, right? You probably already put the pieces together when you're listening. Just like you wouldn't want to have. There was a guy. He was trying to get a Guinness Book of World Records or something. He was living with like poisonous snakes in his room. He had like tons of poisonous snakes in his room, and then he was killed. And then they stopped having that record, in the Guinness Book because obviously. But until then, it was like, he was living purposely with a lot of poisonous snakes, right? And if you're not living with poisonous snake in your house, you don't have that because not every snake has poison, right? But there are some extremely poisonous snakes, and you have to respect that. You got to respect that. You don't want to live in the house with them. So if you don't, then be grateful. And next time you see a very successful guy, next time you see a Jeff Bezos getting divorced, next time you see a Carlos Slim or a Masayoshi Son, a very famous guy getting divorced. Next time you see these like huge payouts, don't assume the guy's a simp. The thing you should assume is that not assume. The thing you should have a massive assumption about, I guess, red flag, or odds are, is that is a woman like this that destroyed all other women that were going for this guy and somehow isolated this guy and got this guy. And you, as a regular guy, would have gone for this woman too. Because the traits she has, whether it's giving sex, making the guy confident, whatever it is, or just sneaking into his life, showing up time and time again, essentially brainwashing the guy, those would have worked on you too. And they work, that's what evolution is that women rise up and they evolve. And they have evolved, women have evolved to be very good at what they do. The average woman even. But when you go for the peak, when you go for the Guinness Book, the world record, the coldest of cold, you get to a level that the average guy cannot understand, cannot fathom, has never dealt with. But I guess that all that to just say that understand that there are women that are different, that rise to the top. And the more you think about it, the more obvious it'll get. You'll be like, yeah, it makes sense. So don't assume she's like your wife or she's like your friend's wife. Those top women who get the top guys, right? Look more closely at these ones. And that's what criminals don't like. Criminals want to fit in. They want to be able to get away with what they're doing. But for myself, I have developed a sixth sense. I've developed a sixth sense. And I remember the last time I felt that with a woman. And we were standing in the kitchen. And we were talking about something. And she suddenly looked at me, and with the weirdest smile, like I'm talking, I had never seen that smile before. The human brain can conceive 100,000 different expressions, so don't write this one off. She had a smile I had never seen personally, and she looked at me straight in the eye, and she goes, I lie. And we were not talking about anything related to that. Nothing. And when she did that, a lot of guys, women say stuff, men say stuff all day. And we don't have the ability to stop and think. This is what always happens later. We're like, wait, was there any red flags? Or how did I? Not for me. This one, I all time stopped at that moment for me. All time stopped. It froze. I still have a freeze frame in my mind of that second. And I knew this was a ruthless murder. I knew it. I knew. It wasn't that she was talking about that. I knew the coldness. I knew. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Here it is, right here. This is not a normal person. I could see it right then. There was no, and for me, when it comes to this type of stuff, the way you survive is by never forgetting certain moments in time. That's why pictures are so important, because every once in a while you'll catch a face that a person has been trying to cover up, and you have to remember that. The glimpses into, I guess now I'm talking about how to spot these types. You're not, and I'm not, going to see this when I meet this woman. I can't see it from her face. I can't see it from her eyes. I can't see it from her mouth right there. I just see a person right now. Okay, I'm reading this in because I've read the article and I know this is a murder. But in real life, I wouldn't know. It would take time, and it would take honesty, and it would take being in the moment, and it would take wisdom and experience, and it would take honesty. And it really takes not maturity, but it takes a calm mind to really spot. Because these aren't types of things you want to do too easily. I would say in my life, this type of woman, how many have I met? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can think of 5 off the top of my head in my entire life of women. And a lot of them I didn't even date. Of all the people I've known, and I even question the 5th, I'll say 4. 4. That's it. Okay? Of all the people I've met, 4 women. And I know for sure I've met one man like this. I've met one man like this, 100%. This guy was scary. But as a man, the likelihood or the danger to me is much greater from a woman. And I would say the same for a woman, is that the biggest danger for her would be that type of man, right? She's the most likely to be the victim of that type of guy. And you as a man are most likely to be victim, right? So be wise out there. Be wise out there. Don't go spreading the peanut butter everywhere, right? Realize people are different. Realize that there is no easy way to protect yourself. By trying to protect yourself too much, you protect yourself too little, is what I'm saying. So by thinking that all women this, all women that, you're making the massive error that they talk about in that one book. Oh God, what is that book? It's the book by the guy who is he's like a private security for famous people. He said that the biggest mistake. They asked him what mistake do women make that makes them vulnerable to attack, and he said the biggest mistake women make is in thinking that all men are criminals. So a woman will be walking home at 3 a.m, and she'll look behind her. There'll be a man, and then she'll suddenly feel total fear, right? Or she'll look across the street, and the guy will look at her, and she'll feel intense fear. And he said the biggest mistake that a woman can make is that she thinks all guys are the same. And the mistake she doesn't, the thing that she doesn't do is compartmentalize. And he said, so for example, and I'll just end on this, in the example that is in the book, is that a woman comes home from work. She lives in a very kind of ritzy building, and it's like one of these like 4-story buildings in New York. They have a lot of these, and so she opens the front door, and she starts to walk up the stairs, and there's a man standing there, and the guy doesn't live in the building. Okay, and he said, he suddenly said, I was up on the 4th floor. And then she said, well, Mrs. So-and-so is not home. He said he was up talking to so-and-so on the 4th floor. And she said, in her mind, like, Miss So-and-so is not home. She's on vacation. See, so what her brain was not recognizing is that there's a difference between a guy who just happens to be walking down the street at the same time at 3 a.m, behind her in the dark. A lot of people walk on the street, right? It's very common. Everybody walks in New York, right? People walk around, and they might be walking in the same goddamn direction because there's only 2 directions on the street, right? So that's not a red flag. But a red flag is when you get into a building that only has 4 apartments, and there's a guy standing there who doesn't live in the building. And then the second red flag is that he said he visited a house where the person's on vacation. See? So your intuition has to, basically, in order to see this type of woman, you need to overcome fear and your emotional brain. You really have to start getting down to your logical brain and say, wait a second, no, I feel that way, but it's not true. All women are not the same. All women are not capable of murdering me. Everybody that walks in the street is not dangerous, right? And so, that was the whole point of the book, was that the way to protect yourself is not to be afraid of everybody and constantly in fear, because that is really what the dangerous people want. They want you to be afraid of everybody the same. And then when you come up to them, you just have the regular fear that you would have of any regular person. And these people are assassins, right? So, they're going to take you down because you don't have the right level of preparedness and fear for this type of person. Okay? So don't take my words lightly. People are not the same. Okay? I hope you guys finally get this. I've had this so many times in so many videos. I know a lot of guys do. You have to be able to prioritize. You have to be able to see, wait a second, this person's standing in this building and they don't live there and the door is locked. Wait a second. This person said that they were in a house that I know nobody's in, right? If at that moment she would have screamed and ran downstairs, that guy wouldn't have done anything. What happened was he offered to carry her bags up to her house, and she let him carry the bags. And then she invited him in. And eventually what happened was he did use the R word, which the grape word, you can't use that. He had some grapes and oranges, and then she only escaped. He was going to stab her to death, and because he went to the kitchen, he was so proud of himself, and she walked behind him. This woman had guts, big time, and survival mechanism was strong in this one. And he was walking to the kitchen, and she walked step by step behind him. And when he went into the kitchen, she opened the front door naked and ran out. And he didn't know till too late. And she survived. And so this guy, this personal private security guy, he was training people, telling people how to survive the most dangerous type of people. And I don't think that men, I doubt you've ever got this message, is that your life can be in danger from a certain type of woman in a certain type of situation. Okay? It's nothing to be worried about. Just like that woman on the street, she had nothing to be worried about from that guy until she invited him in the house. That was when it really happened, right? I'm sure there's people that would abduct her on the street and all that, but that's another type of person. That wasn't what she was dealing with, right? He was the type of criminal that once he's in your house, criminals are like one-trick ponies. They have certain things they do. They have habits and traditions of what they do. And it's less common. The more extreme crimes are less common, right? Most people they're going to open a car door if it's not locked, right? If you have a lock, you protect yourself from most criminals. And then if you have an alarm, you protect yourself from like 90% of those criminals, right? There's things you can do that protect you. But you need to know the difference, right? You need to know real red flags, and that women can murder you. You have to know that as a guy. Some women either abduct your child or murder you. Those are the two things I think that men need to be afraid of, and really afraid of, is that this is reality. And you can't stop every single person. There is no perfect person. There's no perfect guy. There's no perfect, There's no perfect strategy. We live in this crazy world, just like animals are out there in the field. And even the strongest lion gets taken down, right? You got to know that you're not invulnerable. And when you see that cold wind that I'm talking about, if you ever see it in your life, take a moment. Go write it down. Say, oh my God, I just saw it. Ronin's right. There's a different level here. I need to protect myself. Okay. All right, guys. I hope that's been a interesting video, and it's been something I've been wanting to, a lot of things in here I've been wanting to say for a long time, and I just didn't have the right words. I didn't have the right thing, and I think I finally nailed it on this one. So I hope you guys have a great day, and protect yourself. Yeah? Protect yourself. All right, guys. Take it easy.